It's a wonderful story. So congratulations to all of you guys for delivering a stunningly beautiful film. It's incredibly artistic. It's got a wonderful style, emotion, and the performances are fabulous. So really well done. I loved it. So Colm, can I come to you first? This is your debut film. It's as a writer and director, you've obviously done television drama before, and what made you want to adapt this kind of short story, Foster, into a feature film? And was this always what you had in mind for it?
Yeah, well, as you know, this film was made as part of a scheme that's run by TG Cahir and Screen Ireland and the BAI called Cine Cahir. And myself and Cleona, we were kind of actively trying to find material that would be suitable for the scheme that we felt would work. And I just happened upon Claire Keegan's book, Foster, in early 2018. And, it's only, I call it a book, but it's actually really a short story. It's a long short story. It's about 80 pages or something like that. And I read it, and as I was reading it, a sort of panic was setting in, because with each sort of page, I could see this film kind of forming in my mind, and I was just worried the whole time. I was panicking, like, are the rights available for this piece of work? And it just blew me away as a story, and as I said, it took shape in my mind as a film almost immediately. It was also, I think, in a strange way, it was sort of the smallness of the story was quite appealing to me, that it wasn't, it's not, as your summary has shown, it's not a story that's massively reliant on plot. It's quite a simple setup. And I thought that would be a fascinating challenge to try and, create a feature-length piece out of sort of scant material, but material that's so rich, and that I knew with the right actors and the right collaborators that we could make something quite profound, I think, from it.
And yes, what's interesting about the story for the audience is that it's told through the eyes of a young girl caught, and of course Catherine is here with us, young Catherine. So Catherine, we'll be coming to you very shortly to ask you a couple of questions as well. But we're going to always start with the writer-director, and we'll kind of come along just to get a feel for the home audience as to how this film started out, where it came from, and as Colm has told me there, it's come from this original story. And so Colm, for you, tell me, what were the challenges about doing the story from the eyes of the young girl at the center of this?
I suppose in one sense there are challenges in that it's a first person narrative, so that kind of imposes almost like a set of rules on you, in that nothing should really exist outside of this girl's perception. So you had to sort of stick to that, and in terms of the aesthetic of the film, it needed to be very closely aligned to Cait's point of view. But I'm a sucker for first person point of view, first person narratives, and I quite enjoy when a work is actually placing constraints on you, because in some ways it makes the creative process a little easier, in that there's a whole range of decisions that are sort of made for you, and that we can't do that because that just feels entirely at odds with the point of view of the film. So I mean, that was a challenge. I mean, from a writing point of view, there was a challenge in terms of as I said, the story is quite short, so I did have to expand upon it a little, sort of add another act to the film, essentially. So the first act of the film isn't in the original piece.
Hey.
So yeah, there were elements like that were, I suppose, I mean, they were challenging, but it was a strangely effortless kind of experience at the same time, like actually committing the thing to paper. And I'm worried that I've been spoiled in a way that it's never going to be that easy again to adapt something.
Well, I think when you've got a skill, which you clearly have, I think it makes the whole process for a lot of people very easy. So well done you to get that in place in the first instance. How long did it take from the time you sat down to do that process of writing it and developing it as a script? Well, the writing aspect of it.
The writing aspect, yeah. I mean, I'd say I had a first draft from when I sat down with it, page one in terms of the drafting. I'd say I had a first draft within 3 weeks, perhaps.
Very good.
And then I was working with the wonderful Mark O'Halloran, who was our script editor. And so, yeah, I think we went through maybe 4 or 5 drafts before we kind of submitted it. I mean, the Cinematography scheme works that way in that they shortlist 5 different projects, and each has to develop their project to script stage.
Yeah, we'll come to that, the Cinematography now in a moment. But that's interesting when you say about Mark O'Halloran. Obviously, Mark is a genius when it comes to writing, and obviously as an actor as well. So he's bringing all that nuanced element to it, and he's able to give you that insight. Is Mark an Irish language speaker as well?
No, so I mean, that was actually a challenge in that I had to, every time I wrote a draft, I had to do a whole other, translated draft just for Mark. But it was only the dialogue I was able to, you would write the screen directions in English in both versions. But so that was the only sort of slightly tricky thing. But yeah, I mean, Mark is incredible. He just has an extraordinary grasp of character and story and tone and all of those things.
And very generous as well in terms of ideas and support, and so that was great for you. And I was going to come to obviously Cleona in terms of producing for you, and I was going to say, how did you get involved in the project, and what attracted you to Colm's script? But I've since learned that you guys work together, and you have that connection already. So tell us a little bit, how did you get involved in the project, and how did you say to Colm, yes, actually I would be happy to produce that?
Yeah, well, at the time, the Cinematography scheme was up and running, and there was a round where they were looking for female protagonists as the lead character in the film. So, as Colm outlined, he was kind of looking for work that he could adapt, and he came across Claire Keegan's book Foster and fell in love with it. And I remember reading it myself at the bottom of the garden. It was a really hot summer's day, and the story of Foster is set in the summertime. And I just remember how moved I was after reading it, and how it really stayed with me, and all the characters and the storytelling really stayed with me. So then we went about obviously looking for the rights, and thankfully they were available. And from that point on, then we just started on the road to trying to get funding for it, and we applied through the Cinematography scheme, and we got shortlisted. And I mean, it's just such a special project to work on, and we're both just so passionate about the story, and about kind of doing it justice on screen.
And obviously when you say Cinematography scheme there, it's a brilliant scheme, and it's already delivered Fosca, Aracht, Finky, among others. And so tell us a little bit about the process, the developing process through a scheme like that, and how that might differ from others. Are you mute?
There we go. Colm obviously had to write the screenplay, and then we went into competition. I think there were 4 projects at the time that were competing to get full production funding, and us and another project called Patric got full funding. So then obviously that was it. We were geared up to go, and we'd started the casting process. Then we started, I think, that in October 2019. And with gung ho, planning to shoot it in the summer of 2020, because obviously it's a summer story. So
you needed to have in place, and and obviously COVID
Then of course COVID hit in March 2020 and really threw things in disarray. You know, we up to that point we'd been doing physical auditions, and we'd focused most of our efforts down in Munster, because originally we were looking for a young female actor with Munster Irish, because the story in the film is set in Ryan Gaeltacht in Waterford. So we did lots of auditions in all the Gaeltachts in Munster, and then we decided then to look at Dublin. And then of course COVID hit, and we had to cancel all our physical auditions that were planned for April that year, and we went totally to self-tapes then. So
and did you use a casting director, or did you guys work about that yourselves?
No, we didn't use a casting director. We kind of decided to do it off our own bat, I suppose, because it was Irish language as well. And because we were looking for a particular dialect, we kind of felt that we would, have a good sense of cast the cast, from that point of view. So it was a real learning experience as well,
and a difficult one, I'm sure. There's so much involved in terms of logistically, but and so you with COVID, then you decided, did you put out the call through TG and other communities to say it was self-tape?
Well, we actually had a lot of auditions planned already. So we had kind of a database of potential auditionees. So we targeted those first, but we also did contact all like the Gael schools in Dublin, and we contacted other Gael schools as well around the country. And then, we got the flood of self-tapes in then, so we were kind of inundated with, auditions, but it's, you kind of know immediately, the ones that are sort of you can shortlist, and then others that, that obviously you just, put to the side. But Catherine, then we got Catherine's self-tape in May 2020, I think. And I just remember, like, I don't think Colm was at home at the time, and I rang Colm and I was like, I think we've just got a really, really powerful audition in from a young girl called Clinch from Dublin. And we sort of had a really good feeling about Catherine from that point on, and so we decided to have a physical audition. And at the time in Ireland, like, none of us were wearing masks or anything. It was, so we did the auditions, with social distancing and all that. But it was just strange to even think of that time when we weren't wearing masks. They kind of came in a little bit later, I mean.
And did you know very, very specifically the type of young girl you needed? Like, because it's such a subtle performance that was required, and it's pivotal to the whole film. And so were you very clear on that, or were you taken aback that when you saw Catherine and you said, was there a mix of the two?
Yeah, I suppose, you have an idea in your head of who that person could be, and the type of personality that person might have. And, I suppose it's just, when you see something, because when you watch so many auditions, you kind of, you realize, okay, well, that person has a lot of potential, or, and just with Catherine, she had the performance, she had the ability, and also she looked perfect for the role as well. So it was kind of like she was caught, from the get.
So Catherine, that leads right into you. So congratulations, firstly, on getting the role, and then double congratulations on delivering it so brilliantly. So tell us a little bit, can you remember that audition, the first, or your self-tape first and then the audition? What was that like for you?
Thank you. Well, I remember I was very nervous about it, actually. It took a lot of tries, because I was I really wanted to get it perfect, even though it wasn't like a huge thing at the time. But because I had never done anything like it before, and so it was like, I remember after sending it in, just waiting, and it was really exciting to like imagine what it might be like if I did get it. And well,
and what did you think of when you got to read the script, then when you were told, okay, I don't know if you were told straight away, oh, you've got the role, but when you got to read the script about Caught, what did you think of Caught? What did you think of that little girl?
Well, when I first read like part of the script for the self-tape, I kind of I felt she's sort of similar to me in some parts, like, you know, in some ways we're different, but like just kind of.
But you kind of knew that you could play her because you would have a bit of a shyness about you maybe, and that side of things, and you were able to bring that to the screen. Well, and had you a lot of experience before that?
Well, I had done acting classes and drama and musical theatre before, but I'd never been really on screen or in movies or anything before.
Brilliant. And so you were very lucky to get Carrie beside you there as the lady that you went to for the summer as the main character. And so did you and Carrie get a lot of time to rehearse in advance?
The same as you would for anything, but can I just say, I remember the first day I met her and we were out in Chapelizod and it was for Face On casting. So we'd all sent in our self-tapes and I sent in the self-tape and I so desperately wanted to get that part. I adored everything about it. And I would say to anybody I meet now, I adore Claire Keegan's writing anyway. I adore what Colm did with it. But we met in this old kind of hall, like was it a school hall or was it a GA hall or something out in Chapelizod? And she walked in the door and I went, and literally the first words that Eileen says to her, well, you're going, so came out of my mouth instinctively because I just saw this girl and she was so gorgeous and so perfect for everything. And then we did a reading together that day with Andrew Bennett as well, the three of us, and it was just so enjoyable. And Colm was there. Yeah, maybe this time try it a bit. Maybe this time just. So we were all just not ad-libbing, but making a go of making this happen, I suppose. And she was just fantastic. You know?
Isn't that fantastic? And even just very quickly to pop back to you, Colm and Cleona, in terms of the casting overall was really brilliant in this film, and it was so important to get that right. And so tell us very quickly before I go back to Carrie and Michael a little bit, you know, about the casting of those characters, and obviously choosing Carrie and Michael and Andrew. Did you have these people in mind already for these parts? And you know, what was the process involved?
So I've actually never told Carrie this, but when I would have submitted like the original sort of package to Cine Cahir, you know, outlining how we would do the film and who we were thinking of, Carrie Crowley was our pick for Eileen. Yeah, I never told you that. The funny thing was, in terms of, and I suppose this is always the challenge when you're doing Irish language drama, is that, you know, you're necessarily working with a smaller pool of actors. And I've noticed over the years that there's a particular sort of age group where it's even harder, and that was for the part of Sean. There aren't a huge amount of actors in that age range, you know, who have that they could off. And the reality is, even though I knew about Andrew Bennett, I didn't know Andrew Bennett spoke Irish. And it was only, I think it was maybe the producer Paddy Hayes or someone who had mentioned it to me, that he had been in, I can't remember, it was in that TV series that Paddy would have made.
Was it Coop that he was in, or?
Epic, was it Epic or something? Was it Epic it was called?
Epic.
It was Epic, yeah.
Epic.
And then I just checked out a few scenes from that Andrew was in, and I was like, oh wow, he's actually got really good Irish, and I really like Andrew anyway as an actor. So yeah, suddenly, you know, it was Andrew, and then we were pretty sure about Carrie, and we were very sure about Catherine as well. And then we just wanted to get them into the room together. So that was that day in Chapelizod when we kind of had that chemistry read. And yeah, myself and Cleona left that day just very, very happy, because we knew we had our three.
You had it.
Yeah. And then for the kind of other characters, we've obviously got Michael Patric playing Coat's dad. and we had Kate Niconienig playing her mother. And for those, it was, we kind of got a lot of self-tapes in, wasn't it, Cleo? We got from different agents, and both Michael's and Kate's really just stood out. We were like, wow, we really, and again, once we brought them into Chapel Elizabeth as well that time. And I remember I was filming the auditions myself, and I just kept kind of zooming out to frame Kate and Michael together, because just the way they were, all the wordless stuff that they were doing that was telling you so much about their relationship, the kind of broken relationship and the sort of festering animosity between them. It was just beautiful. I just kept being drawn out to this wider shot so I could see that interplay. And yeah, they were in then. Once after that day, we were like, yeah, that's those two.
Yeah, it goes to show you too the importance of these chemistry tests, you know, just to see how people, and actually to see how they look on screen. You're right, you know, together, and to see how that plays out. But Carrie, coming back to you, obviously you were attracted to the original writer of the book, and then when you saw the script, you know, in terms of Colm's script, obviously Eileen, this character, she's number one, she's so kind to Cot, which is wonderful, and you really depict that. But her backstory is so heartbreaking, and her character has to hold that together, and we have to kind of get a sense of something as the audience, even though we don't know yet what's gone on, but we know that the woman has, you know, heartache there. There's something. So tell us a little bit how you felt emotionally bringing that woman, you know, so brilliantly to life on screen for the audience.
It was very strange. I don't know. And I read Foster after I read An Cailín Ciúin, after I read Fanacht, which was the original title. So I'd read it as Gaeilge and then went back to read the novella that Mike actually sent me a link. And like since then, I'm like a Claire Keegan groupie. I just think she can do no wrong. But with Eileen, it was almost like just putting on this woman that I seemed to know from women of my mother's age. She reminded me so much of my mother at that time in the 80s, and everything about the way she lived. I loved her, but I felt so much sadness for her. Even now when I talk about Eileen, or when I think about the story and I think about the ending, I just want to cry. And there were so many times in the making of it that I would end up just in floods of tears myself, because it really impacts on you. You can't not be affected by what is happening. But it was very interesting as well for myself. And I don't want, like, spoiler alert, I don't want to say what happens for people who haven't seen or what the kind of the sorrow is about. But I know there was a day myself and Andrew were in the sitting room and we both saw something. And I went, I really don't think that would be there. And Andrew said, I said exactly the same thing. It was almost like we became, yeah. And you remember that as well. And we were both so sure of our characters. It was like, it wasn't a question. It was just, no, but this is who we are. It didn't feel like an acting role. Like sometimes you're prepping something and you're thinking, oh yeah, that line would be great. So let's deliver. Oh yeah, yeah. And with this, it was just like literally you put on Eileen or you put on Sean's clothes or you put on Coyte's clothes, and we just became them in a really, I don't know, really deep way. For me, it was a very profound experience, everything about it. I have never been as emotionally connected to something, you know. Yeah, it was really beautiful, and it was an amazing experience for all of us, despite COVID and despite the fact that many of us were double jobbing or treble jobbing and like COVID tested within an inch of our lives, and hitting the road to get to whatever other gig you were doing, which would be the complete opposite.
Yes.
An Cailín Ciúin.
Yeah.
But even with Catherine, there was just something about it that felt absolutely true. It never felt like we were acting. It just felt like we were, if that makes any sense. And a lot of that is to do with Colm as well. So, you know, like.
That's what I was going to ask you with regards to that, because you always felt as the audience that nobody knew you were there watching them, you know, that you were in the house, but but that you were eavesdropping a little bit on what was going on. And it was so subtle. And obviously for Colm as well, obviously that's down to Kate with the cinematographer, and we'll get to you, Kate, because, you know, it was magically done in that respect. But what kind of collaboration would have happened between you and Colm, and obviously with you, Michael, as well? You know, Carrie, when you say it's down to Colm, give us an idea of that.
Well, a lot of it is, it was like there were many takes, but it was never a diktat. It was like, it was being felt. And when Colm knew it was right, then it was right. And I remember one day, Colm, when we were in the clothes shop buying the clothes for her, and there's a piece at the end that should move, and you said, try doing something, and I tried doing something, and I tried doing something, and it was the first time that you'd actually tried with an instruction as opposed to a feeling. And then you just went and do whatever feels right, and what felt right was right. So it was really about feeling. The whole thing was about feeling. And like with Mike and I, we'd be really good friends, and we hate each other in this. And we could both feel that hate in the space when we were doing scenes. It was like, there was just, I don't know, I keep coming back to truth, or there was something about it that's in the original, it's in novella, the novella from Claire, but it's in what you did with it as well, Colm, that you can't mess with it. It has to be kind of.
I think it's a combination of factors, isn't it? I mean, even down to the locations. Like, I always felt like when that house that we found for the Kinsellas, like that, you know, we obviously, Emma Lowney, our production designer, obviously did a little bit of work, but really not that much. Like that's essentially what that house is. So even that, like, to walk into that house, I can only imagine, like, from an actor's point of view, like for me as a director, I felt like I was walking into the story. Like when I first recce'd it, I was like, and it's giving you all of these, this like memory is sort of like embedded in the walls, and it's all of that stuff like is feeding into this what I hope feels like a truthful and sort of an honest portrayal of that time and these people. So yeah, it's all of that. And then I suppose I'm sure Kate will talk about this, but myself and Kate spend a lot of time talking about, you know, developing a very sort of unobtrusive style, that we're not trying to manipulate the audience. We're not, you know, we're just trying to create something that is quite naturalistic.
Absolutely, and I'll come to Kate now, but before I do that, just in terms of the acting again, Michael, I'll come to you maybe on that, because in terms of, obviously you play Caud's father, and like your performance is so well delivered, but your character, he's not a very nice guy, let's just face it.
No.
He neglects his wife, his kids, and he thinks he's a young lad still on the prowl, basically. So how did you prepare for a role like this, you know, in terms of, and did you collaborate strongly with the director, and did you know how far you could go with it, you know?
Yeah, obviously Colm and I had a lot of discussion about it, but the first thing that I noticed when I got Colm's shooting script, and the difference from Claire Keegan's novella, which is brilliant, but the dad character, or Dan, Colm made the decision that he would speak English only, even though he's living in an Irish-speaking family. And he's doing it out of stubbornness, and he's almost isolating himself even more than he already was. And I think he's in a vicious cycle of self-loathing, and that's where I got that from, just the fact that he's refusing to speak Irish, even though all of his children speak Irish and his wife speaks Irish. He has to understand it, he has to pick it up, but he just refuses to do it. So I took it from there, and then through discussions with Colm, like obviously, as you say, he's not a very nice guy, and he neglects his family, and I was more interested in why he's like that. So I just did a backstory that he was a prominent GAA star, and then when all that left him, when he was too old for that, he looked to find the buzz somewhere else and turned to his vices like drinking, gambling, and smoking, and womanizing, and everything else. And then the more he hated himself, the more he could feel the outside judgment. And then the more he felt that, the more he doubled down on the vices and went, well, if that's probably what I am, that's what people think of me. And in the 80s, I think Irish men who were stuck like that, they had no outlet. They couldn't find a way out of it. I was Caud's age at that time in the early 80s, so I would have seen quite a bit of that in rural Ireland.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. I think we came to the conclusion that he was stuck and he couldn't find his way out of it. And usually in playing those kind of flawed characters, I would try my best not to judge the flaws of the character or criticize the flaws of the character. But in this case, I thought it was okay to do that. And I remember thinking, looking at the actors who were playing my children, going, how can you neglect a family to such an extent? But it was okay to ask that question in this case, because I think he would have asked himself those questions. You can't possibly do it and not be aware of it.
That's it.
But the more he's aware of it, the worse it gets, because he can't find his way out of it.
Because you do get a glimmer, you know, of that there could be a warmer relationship, and that it's just all gone wrong for him. And but
yeah, and I think that the interesting thing there as well is the Dad's resentment of Sean, and on the surface it might seem like he judges Sean for maybe a lack of masculinity or something like that, but it's actually envy. He envies his pristine farm. You know, I can't do that. He envies his relationship with his daughter. He'd like to be able to do it, but he just doesn't know how. He doesn't have the tools.
Absolutely, absolutely. And look, Colm, for you and Cleona to attract, you know, the talents as well to deliver this on screen, like Kate McCullough and Stephen Rennicks, in terms of bringing their absolute skill, you know, in what they do to this film. Kate, I'll come to you first, maybe, because for me, looking at that, well, number one, the cinematography is spectacular, and you know, the scenes are really beautiful. I don't know, it's got its own style or something. It's hard to put my finger on it, because I've seen your other work, and obviously you've got that wonderful style anyway in terms of that ability, but this kind of stands out, you know, obviously, you know, when it comes to, for example, you know, the car scenes. Well, number one, actually, before we get on to that, you know, where did the ideas, did you come to this with a very specific style? How did you plan for that? Obviously with the production designer, because as Colm mentioned, you know, the internal scenes were so important, that house, you needed to get that sense, but then so much was done in the external as well. How do you plan for something like that, Kate?
Well, I think that, like, when I come to a script or a story, I don't like to kind of impose a look on it. It's about kind of trying to feel your way as you start to engage with, say, the director and locations and all the other kind of HODs. So for me, it's like just trying to find the language of that story. And I think, yeah, Claire Keegan's work is just so kind of precise and economic, and sort of distills that it just kind of lends itself to filmmaking in a way, and sort of the things that are unspoken. So yeah, I think just, you know, big part of it was finding the right locations, and I think, I mean, myself and Colm hadn't worked together before, and it just felt like we sort of fell into the same step pretty
Oh, did you work together in that TV drama?
No, we hadn't worked together before.
Oh,
This
you hadn't, sorry.
Yeah, the first time, yeah. So
okay, so it was your first time, okay.
Yeah. But I remember we shot camera tests, Kate. Remember that day in, I think it was August 2020, and we both kind of came away going, oh, it feels like we've worked together before, have we? We were really just sort of in sync, I think, from the beginning. So that was yeah, it's great.
Quite unusual, I think. I mean, you know, working with different directors is always a kind of a just slotting in with the energy or the rhythm of that director, and I think just somehow just was very at ease with Colm immediately. So yeah, I think even we ended up using a shot from one of the tests in the film.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Already just gathering. Catherine was just doing her thing, and you know, just amazing, kind of immediately kind of ready for the camera. So yeah,
very, very good. And so, like, there was a lot of complexity really in it, in a sense, because there's a lot of scenes in the car, you know, but you know, they're looking back at Caught, but they're also of Caught's perspective, you know, and almost dreamlike sequences of movement. You know, she's looking out at the sky, the trees are moving, you know, against that. I'm like, you do it so seamlessly and beautiful, the colors. But tell us a little bit about, you know, the technical elements that are involved in that, you know, in capturing pieces like that, you know, what's the planning and how did you do that? I'm like, obviously, give us a little bit of the technical.
Just a little bit. Well, actually, it's kind of like quite a number of contortions in that car.
Yeah.
But the older cars have, some of them have a lot more space than what you have these days. But yeah, I think that we chose to shoot large format and to go for a kind of a boxier aspect ratio at 1:37. And I think actually in the car, it just somehow allows you to feel like you're very much in the space of the car, whereas on a regular format, you know, Super 35, you wouldn't get that same sense of kind of 3D kind of sitting into that space. And I think the car seemed to kind of just emphasize that. So maybe that's kind of what you're picking up on a little bit, but it just seemed to really kind of, when I sat in with the camera and just was like, wow, okay, I haven't really felt that before through the camera, that you have the sense of the ceiling and just the feeling that you are physically in this space traveling. I think that like a huge part of the, for me with the visuals and with light and, you know, registering on the sensor, was that we were shooting in a season change, and it's kind of time of the year that I like to shoot best is September. Okay. It just seems like the light, you get the kind of morning dawn and dusk, and you can sort of get that shift of light over the day, and also you've got a season change, so it's yeah, as a cinematographer, that's kind of for me kind of the dream time to shoot. I know you guys wanted to shoot earlier in the summer, and you know, there's a I suppose a fecundity that would come with that, but I think we definitely managed to get this sort of sense of time, you know, the shift of time over the summer that she spent with the Kinsellas.
Yes, yeah, and obviously even with her, you know, there's quite a bit of action, as I said, and her running up and down the laneway and all of that. It was just, it really was seamless and very beautiful. So well done, congratulations on that. And Stephen, for you, I'm like, I think for a film like this, well, the music score in this is really beautiful and so subtle, and what it allowed for was the quietness of the film itself to carry through. And I think the story of the film, those quieter moments, and it not at any stage did it impose itself or maybe made you tune out, oh, that's the music there or whatever. It was just really subtle. So tell us a little bit about your approach to working on a film as kind of slow moving and poignant as this one.
Yeah, it's funny you say all that, because I know some of the very first conversations Colm and I had about it were about me trying my best not to wreck it by preserving that silence and a kind of peace. And it's a funny thing because it's actually a story I felt I'd never heard before. I've seen that setting, I've seen the same characters in a way, but I've never kind of had those feelings about a story like that. And when I watched it, I was absolutely blown away by it. And I think I kind of ended up not begging, but just really very subtly begging to be let at it, because I just felt, like, it's really funny. As I was watching it, I was kind of thinking, wow, it's amazing. This is really, really, really good. It's got to fall apart at some stage. And I kept going, and I got to the end, and I was going, this is extraordinary, and it's really extraordinary. I think it's an extraordinary film, and you know, it's so. I say that as a kind of precursor to feeling that I was really privileged to be let near it, and I think when you have that feeling about something that's that good, it's about how precious it is. And one of the things that this film has is there's so little vanity in it. There's so little. It's got such integrity that you really do feel you've discovered this story and these people. You can't see the construction lines. You can't really see the architecture. You just feel the story. And I think Catherine's performance is just absolutely extraordinary. It's just, you know, and that's, you know, in a way you talk about, everything seems simple about this film in so many ways. And it's a really complex thing to achieve that. And the music is trying to somehow maintain this really quiet tension. And you know, it's hard. I don't know. There isn't really a kind of end. It's about being open. I think it's a bit like what Kate said. It's about trying not to impose any preconceived ideas. It's about trying to see what the film suggests to you and responding to it and trying to forget about yourself. And you throw things at it, and certain things then seem to have traction or seem to be part of that world. But I mean, the other thing is, I think there was probably about 3 sets of ideas, or ideas and then revisions. And Colm's notes were, I have to be very careful, among the best notes I've ever received. And actually could be almost published as a way of dealing with this, because they're so considered. And it was really nice to have that kind of interaction where I felt that that there was, you know, that we had similar ideas about what we were trying to do that were reinforced all the time. And yeah, it was a lovely, it's funny, it really gave me a renewed energy for what I do in a way, because it's to get to work on things like this is just is great, you know. It's really great.
Well, when you were called upon, you delivered, you know, so, you know, it was really, really great. And so, Colm, for you overall, this production, and you know, from the time that that you kickstarted, the physical production was how long?
It was 5 weeks.
5 weeks.
5 week shoot, yeah. So,
yeah.
And prep, I don't know, what was the prep, Cleo? Was never ending, but yeah.
Yeah, prep is kind of tricky because you know, we were waiting, we just come out of lockdown earlier in the summer, and we were waiting for the green light to go into production. And of course there was a ticking clock of the time of year and everything, you know, like changing foliage and changing seasons. And
yes,
yeah, I think we had probably I mean, we had started the prep earlier. We'd started location scouting, I think, you know, in the early summer. So we knew that was our priority, was getting these fantastic period locations. But I suppose it was really proper then prep, you know, pre-production. We started in July. So, you know, we had maybe 5-6 weeks to pull it all together. So it was very, very fast turnaround. And of course, it was at a time as well when all productions were going back after the lockdown. So there was a real shortage of crew. So we were, you know, we actually ended up getting some amazing crew from Northern Ireland, you know, to work on the film. Yeah, it was a real fast turnaround, as I said, but it all really worked out fantastically.
Fantastic. And Catherine, for you, so that was your first time on a big set, was it? And obviously you and Carrie got very close working together. How was that for you? How did you enjoy that?
Yeah, it was kind of weird at first, because really I had no idea what it was like behind the scenes and things like this. And so yeah, it was quite overwhelming, like see all this, like this big thing. But yeah, after only like maybe like 2 days or something of filming, I started feeling like very comfortable, like, around all the people on set and stuff, and it just kind of felt normal.
And I have to say, he's not with us today because he's in a show in Kerry, but we're close. But herself and Andrew are like that. It's the kind of the dad thing, and the jokes and the fun, and it was just so lovely to watch that as well. So that hug at the end is
and for you guys, Michael as well on set, the three of you as actors, and obviously the other actors involved, did you get much time to kind of rehearse overall? Or of course, Michael, you obviously had to stay probably in character when you were around Catherine, having absolutely no time for her, in a sense, but that must be difficult, because I'm sure you get on so well on set, and then to be that way on screen.
No, I would like. No, I didn't stay in character between takes. No, because it didn't need it. It was all in there. So I didn't see the point. It's a certain frame of mind you have to stay in, all right, but it's just bubbling below the surface. Just you're like five child actors. Start behaving as you feel your character would.
Yes, and for you, Michael, I'm sure you must have been so impressed when you saw the performance of such a young actor like that. And again, just as Stephen is saying about when you work in a wonderful project, like this, that it re-inspires you. It gives you a new, passion, kind of a revived passion for why it is you do the work that you do. And so for you as well, Michael, I'm sure, and Carrie, when you see somebody like Catherine and her performance, and the other children obviously as well, what did you make of all that, Michael, and what was your...
And I've said this to Maeve, Catherine's mom, before. She's an amazing ability to listen, and Colm would give a very subtle direction that a lot of the rest of us, we might take a second to think about it. Catherine knew it straight away. She's a really good listener, and she's very clever, and she acts on the direction really, really quickly, and she only has to be told something once. And that's the thing that impressed me most, because there are a lot of us who've been around a long time who don't have that ability. And all of the younger actors who played Catherine's siblings, they, like I was saying to you earlier, they did such a good job at feeling the environment they were in that it affected me watching them. And that's amazing to see. And the film overall I had a good feeling doing it, and I enjoyed it. And the thing I enjoyed the most was watching Colm and Kate working, and I'd go and watch scenes being filmed that I wasn't in, just because I enjoyed that. But then when I saw it, I was blown away. And even when I was in ADR doing ADR stuff, I knew it was going to be great.
Absolutely. And I'm just very quickly looking at one or two questions, a couple of the questions that have come in here. And Sean T. O'Malley, who is such a wonderful actor, yes, he's saying, this is a beautiful film. Cohordicus, congratulations to everyone involved. I found the music played such an important role. There you are, Stephen, such an important role in the storytelling. And any insight into the music that the panel would be great. So hopefully, Sean, we cover that, but we'll come back to it again, actually. And he says, I also loved the look of the film and found the 4:3 aspect ratio added to the claustrophobia at the start, and provided a real sense of the personal experience that caught and all the characters were going through. Would love to hear the thoughts behind the aspect ratio choice. Thanks. Have we kind of covered that, Kate, or would you like to add a little bit to that? And then Stephen, we might come to you a little bit again.
I guess, I mean, I think the foundation for that choice was like the simplicity and sort of almost kind of naivety to the story. There's a complexity to it, but at the same time, I think just the simplicity of writing, we wanted to somehow reflect that in the image, and so it was about sort of creating space for the more kind of complex themes that were sitting underneath. So I think it was about sort of creating that space. Maybe Colm, you want to feed into that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, as you say, like that, the whole film is really about trying to embody her point of view. And there is something about the kind of Academy ratio that feels, I guess, slightly more innocent now because of, we associate it with, from a cinematic point of view, we associate it with a more innocent past, perhaps. But it also, I guess, speaks to the notion that, this is, I mean, it's a film all about kind of liminal spaces. It's about a character who's on the threshold of understanding, but not quite understanding everything. And that was like, that's one of the things that fascinated me about it to begin with, is like, that's how do you transpose that very particular point of view to the language of film? That was always an intriguing kind of challenge. And I think that aspect ratio sort of speaks to that notion that this is a point of view that doesn't have a complete understanding of the world yet, but is also still, as Kate was saying, does allow for quite an intimate experience. I mean, because you are essentially seeing more than you would traditionally see top and bottom. And I know, Kate, you spoke quite a bit about how it's actually shooting full frame, which gives you this aspect ratio, is actually quite close to like the human eye, what the human eye would see.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why do you feel that, Kate? Why is that a given that it is that it? Have they got that sense of perspective on a human, perspective, I suppose, in a sense?
Yeah, I guess it's just it's a bigger sensor that the image is landing on, and so the glass has to sort of project onto that size, and so then you're getting sort of a slightly more, in my opinion, more of sort of 3D feel to the world around you. So yeah, I guess it sort of lends itself to a portrait piece where one character is experiencing the world kind of point of view. I mean, we did talk about maybe expanding the aspect ratio at one point during the film, and we sort of tested that, but it felt actually too self-conscious. So yeah, we stuck with 137.
Well, I suppose, Kate, for you as well, you've worked on, normal people, conversations with friends as well, and Arok. So you kind of probably had a sense of what you wanted to bring to this, to make it that delicate and that intimate for the audience experience. Did you feel that you kind of already knew when you were coming to this is what's right for this, from the experience that you've had?
I think that you have ideas, all right. You come to the table with, kind of an archive of experience, whatever that is. I mean, I think, I've spent 10 years kind of running around with the camera in a documentary mode, and so I think that's almost, for me, is my kind of well of
fountain of knowledge.
So I think I dip into that, and that's my sensibility, and that's that's what I come to the table with. But I think for me it's very important to find those, like, to come to those decisions with the director. You have to both be on board with those sort of big decisions, to kind of carry it through. So yeah.
Brilliant. And Colm, in a sense, as Sean mentioned there about the importance of the music, and we heard Stephen, passionately talk about why he wanted this and when he saw the film. And it's interesting to see, Stephen, that you got on board when the film was there and you had that to look at even to begin with. But Colm, tell us a little bit about why Stephen was so important to this film and obviously the end result, and I'm sure you must be delighted with it.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic. I mean, it goes without saying that Stephen's reputation precedes him. So we felt very lucky to get Stephen on board. But I always remember the first Zoom meeting I had with Stephen. He said to me, because he would have seen it was essentially locked cut at that point, or very close to it, and we in there, but we didn't have a huge amount. Like, it was, you know, we knew it wasn't going to be a heavily scored film. But yeah, Stephen's first thing was like, I don't actually really like music in film. Okay, this is the guy. So yeah, I mean, it was just that understanding of, you know, I mean, that's what you get with someone who has so much experience and I guess artistry to their craft. Like, it's the understanding when not to be present as well. In the same way that Claire Keegan writes, you know, it's that economy of style, and that was certainly brought to bear by Stephen, and that I found it really moving, actually, because I've made shorts and stuff before, but they were generally they didn't have any score. So this is really the first time I've ever worked with a composer. So I'll never forget when I first got the first pass of the score, and I was laying them down and watching the film. And I actually found it really moving, because it was, what you're receiving is a response to what you've created, you know, and it wouldn't exist only for what you've given the composer. And it becomes like this beautiful sort of chemical reaction that's taken place that's entirely unique. And I just found that really moving. And, you know, that the film was just assuming this musical identity, almost that it's like, it's this magical thing. So yeah, I mean, I just think Stephen, what I realized actually is a composer's job, particularly on a film like this, which is so focused on point of view, like the craft of composing is actually like an expression of empathy in a way. Like, you know, so the music is sort of coming from the inside out rather than the outside in. It's not being imposed on the film. It's actually an expression of character, you know. And I just thought Stephen did that with such nuance and delicacy that it just elevates the film, yeah, to a whole other level. And
yeah. I'll just go to another question that's come in, or it might be more an observation in a sense, from Scott McCutcheon.
Oh
yeah, you okay?
Driver.
I thought it might be
everything.
Okay, and he says, hi guys, can't wait to see this film. He said, seeing your faces and hearing you talk about the film is making me a little emotional. So happy for you all. Scott McCutcheon's cohort.
Scott was our first AD. Scott was our, yeah. So, hey,
but
Scott.
he was also Andrew's stand-in as the driver, because Andrew couldn't drive. So we did so many hilarious scenes with Scott putting on a wig, taking off a wig, putting on a coat, taking off a coat. It was really good fun, because he's just such good crack anyway. Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice. That's so nice. And so guys, I know we're coming up to the end of our time, and you've just been really wonderful to talk with. And absolute congratulations on a wonderful film. And Carrie, you kind of said at the very outset about being, you know, really emotionally taken by the story. And I think all of us as an audience watching it have been as well. And so I know it's going to be a wonderful journey for you guys, and best of luck